Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and Deadpool 3 will almost certainly include Patrick Stewart, Charles Xavier, according to an interview with Patrick Stewart by the always inquisitive Josh Horowitz on his Happy Sad Confused podcast. But what will that cameo look like, and what reason do we have for this role to be more involved than his, well, in his words, disappointing cameo in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? In this video, I'm going to break down how it's not the X-Men movies that will be the most center in Deadpool 3's crosshairs, but rather Marvel's own multiverse saga prologue in Multiverse of Madness, as this film seeks to satirize and crystallize any of the perceived stumbles as Marvel Studios has rolled out its latest phase. Now, it seems like Deadpool 3 will be the biggest movie of 2024, and to catch you up on this X-Men history, starting this Monday, January 8th, New Rockstars will be releasing weekly in-depth breakdowns of the Fox X-Men films, all 13 of these films from 2000 to 2020 in our X-Men Sneak Rewatch series. So on Monday, I will be revisiting the very first X-Men film to break down new details that have only now emerged and what exactly from this film Kevin Feige wants to bring back in the MCU in this upcoming Mutant Homecoming. Okay, Professor X, let's talk about him. Late last year, I broke down the 23 cameos that have either been confirmed or speculated to appear in Deadpool 3, and Patrick Stewart was definitely on that list because late last year on February 9th, 2023, Patrick Stewart told comicbook.com about Deadpool 3, "I've been told to stand by. I know nothing more than that, honest." And then this week, the great Josh Horowitz interviewed Patrick Stewart for the Happy Sad Confused show and asked him about playing Charles Xavier.
I also, of course, want to mention your wonderful tenure in the X-Men franchise. 8 appearances, I believe, as Professor X, Charles Xavier. Patrick, do you know how many times you died in the X-Men series? Of those 8 appearances, do you know how many times Charles died?
No.
4. That is a horrible ratio. You died 50% of the movies you appeared in. I don't know what does that say, Patrick?
I don't know. I don't know. But I do now have every confidence that he's still around.
On the X-Men front, I would be shocked if your buddy Hugh Jackman, who is returning in Deadpool 3, one of his first phone calls was not to you, Patrick. I'm going to guess I might see Patrick Stewart in a Deadpool Wolverine movie.
It has come up. There's been a process, but, you know, the last 2-3 years have been so difficult with both the labor problems and the health problems.
So Josh was referring to the fact that Charles Xavier died in 2006's X-Men The Last Stand, obliterated by Phoenix Jean Grey, in 2017's Logan, stabbed in bed by Wolverine's clone X-24, and in 2022's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, his face was split in half by Scarlet Witch Wanda Maximoff. And I say face split in half, not neck snapped, because if you look closely, she grabs 2 parts of his face and like rip them apart. Now I was trying to figure out what 4th instance Josh was referring to, and I think he was talking about 2014's X-Men Days of Future Past, which doesn't show Charles's death per se, but it was implied that those Sentinels might have killed all of them in various past instances before Kitty Pryde was able to reset the timeline and prevent that fate. And in the final part of the movie, we do see the Sentinels get close to Charles and Kitty and Logan as they're waiting for history to change in 1973 to rewrite that future. And while those blasts from the Sentinels fire at Charles and he covers his face, he vanishes along with everything else from this timeline at the last second. So I wouldn't say he technically dies there, but I guess you could count that as like a moment of death. But Patrick Stewart was referring to the difficulties with film production during COVID and the complete halt on production during the labor strikes by the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes throughout the year of 2023. And specifically, Deadpool 3 was rushing production in June and July of last year to get ahead of the SAG-AFTRA strike. And that rush might have resulted in the lack of on-set security that allowed so many set photos and videos to leak. But the decision by Ryan Reynolds and director Sean Levy to shoot as much as they could practically in an open-air set with physical set pieces is really a key component for why Deadpool 3 could be such a refreshing change of pace from the rest of Marvel's multiverse saga, and could be the story that actually fixes it, which would explain why Marvel Studios is putting all of its chips on this one Marvel movie in 2024. Due to security concerns and for secrecy and for health and safety, so much of the Marvel properties of the past few years have been shot on green screens or the volume or other digitally composited sets, and viewers have just started to sense that this doesn't feel authentic. The actors are often not in the same room, or not knowing who they're in the scene with, or just not knowing what movie they're shooting a scene for. Gwyneth Paltrow said that she forgot that she was in Spider-Man Homecoming. Brie Larson said that the first thing she shot for Marvel Studios was the post-credit scene for Captain Marvel, in which Carol Danvers returns to Earth and Avengers compound after the snap and asks where's Fury, but Larson said that they put her on a green screen set and would not tell her who was in the scene with her or what movie this was for.
who else is in the room? And they're like, 5 people. And I was like, okay. And I went, where's Fury? And then just kind of.
Elizabeth Olsen told Vanity Fair in that amazing lie detector test video that she never even met John Krasinski, and this was after Multiverse of Madness showed Wanda Maximoff killing Krasinski's version of Reed Richards in that Illuminati massacre.
Is the smartest man alive?
No. I don't know him though, but I would never assume that an actor would be the smartest man alive.
You don't know him at all?
I don't think so. No, I've never met him.
You were in the same movie.
I've never met him.
She's coming out truthful.
Never met him. And he's already told me that I've lied a couple times. I've never met that man. I've met his wife.
Okay, then.
By the way, it's tough when you're reading news to have a sense of the full context of what you're reading. Like, is it biased? Is it credible? Are the sources more substantial than user 2528929@x.com? Well, Ground News gives you all of that context and so much more. Ground News is an app and a website that provides you with articles from around the world in one place and additional context that other media sources often don't show you in order to help avoid disinformation and just be better informed. Ground News gives you details on the coverage you're reading, like the total articles published on a story, their political affiliation, and who owns each source, making it easy to see how affiliation and vested interest can shape the narrative, and how that affiliation might skew the coverage of that story. Scrolling down, I can see every headline on the story ranging from left, center, and right leading outlets. And you can do this for various topics like Marvel or HBO or even the 2024 US election. What Ground News is doing is super important, and it's part of why we are thrilled to have them sponsoring this video and why it's such a good tool to have access to in the lead up to the election, or even when major movie studio news drops. To check it out for yourself, go to ground.news/rockstars. You can subscribe using the link in the description for less than $1 per month, or get 30% off unlimited access to the Vantage subscription, which is what I use. Again, that's ground.news/rockstars. Supporting our sponsors also supports this channel, so thank you to Ground News. And Josh Horowitz similarly interviewed Daniel Craig and asked him about the reports that he had shot a scene as Balder the Brave in this whole Illuminati sequence, because we saw stunt previs footage that showed Balder the Brave dead, and we saw Daniel Craig's face clearly in concept art for Balder the Brave, but apparently this was removed from the film.
Have you ever heard of the character Balder the Brave?
No.
There was a report, Daniel, that you were going to be in Doctor Strange.
I believe it, wasn't it?
Don't you hide behind that mug, Daniel Craig.
I know what you're talking about.
So naturally, Josh asked Patrick Stewart what it was like to shoot that sequence in Multiverse of Madness.
There's nothing sentimental about the way they dispatched you in the Doctor Strange movie. I've talked to a lot of the actors that were doing the Multiverse of Madness movie. That was a very interesting production. I'm just curious, like, were you alone? Like, were you with the other actors? Do you remember like the circumstances of that?
I was alone.
You were alone. That's what I thought. The magic of movie making.
I think that the big scene, I think each one of the leading actors had the same experience. They were shot on their own.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from.
Frustrating and disappointing.
By the way, you have to watch Josh's entire interview with Patrick Stewart in the link in the description. It's such an amazing conversation. So the difference with Deadpool 3 is that they are clearly shooting this film in a different way to contrast the experience of shooting movies like Multiverse of Madness. This time they're doing it in open air with practical sets, security be damned. We've seen some of this in set photos, some of which we can show, some of which we can't, but spoiler warning, skip to this time if you don't want to know what these are. We've definitely seen imagery of Deadpool and Wolverine fighting on the ruins of the 20th Century Fox logo, decapitating Sabretooth, an appearance from modded versions of Red Skull's car, the Fantastic Four car, Moon Knight's cupcake truck. Like, unless production spent thousands of dollars building decoy versions of these vehicles, props, and sets just to throw off fans, this would be when they have super limited time to shoot this movie around the strikes. It just seems like this is all real, and they are building these physical sets because that is the feel that those aughts movies had. They wanted to feel like a sort of campy throwback. They want the reaction to all those things to be on the actors' faces. And yeah, it just seems like this is going to be a big meta battle royale where Deadpool kills the X-Men universe, or where Deadpool desperately tries to save the X-Men universe. Whatever happens in Deadpool 3, the post-credit scene of the Marvels confirm that a version of Charles Xavier is waiting in the wings of the MCU, and that's gotta be Patrick Stewart, right? Like, remember that alternate universe that Monica Rambeau ends that movie in? Hank McCoy tells binary Maria Rambeau that Charles is waiting for an update. So by Patrick Stewart telling us it has come up, there has been a process, yeah, he's just confirming what what we already know. He's gonna be in Deadpool 3, but specifically, if you listen closely, it sounds like this is an appearance he has not shot yet. There have been some unconfirmed rumors that the villain character that Emma Corrin is playing is Cassandra Nova, Charles Xavier's evil twin from the womb who tried to strangle him, but like baby Charles defeated her with a psychic blast, but she survived and she came back to get him later on in life. I doubt that Deadpool 3 would kill off Charles Xavier yet again, especially since Patrick Stewart considered his experience of Multiverse of Madness to be, quote, frustrating and disappointing. So to have Charles get killed again by like a long-lost evil twin sister or by Deadpool goofing around, I think that would just feel like something we've seen before. That's why I think the bloodbath in Deadpool 3 is going to be presented as a kind of parody of the massacre in Multiverse of Madness. Something that is so bloody and could only have happened if all these actors were actually in the same place at the same time. And in this instance, I think Wade Wilson is actually going to try to prevent these killings, to do everything in his power to protect Charles Xavier, even to the point of losing his own limbs and spraying Professor X in his blood. Like maybe unwillingly at first. Because we need Wade to answer for all the times he has dissed Patrick Stewart's version of Professor X in the past Deadpool films.
Let us go talk to the professor.
McAvoy or Stewart? These timelines are so confusing.
The day I decided to become a crime-fighting shit-swizzler who rooms with a bunch of other little whiners at the Neverland mansion of some creepy, old, bald, Heaven's Gate-looking mother. On that day, I'll send your shiny happy ass a friend request.
To me, Charles Xavier being immune to Wade's snark and telepathically chatting with Wade inside his mind while he's using Wade's body as a human shield would just be the best way to redeem all the times these films have made the character die. I'm so excited for you to join us for our upcoming X-Men Stick Rewatch series. The first video is coming on Monday. The best way to support new Rockstars and everything we're doing is to grab some merch over at nerdride.shop. You can follow me on all social platforms at Erik Voss. Subscribe to all 3 channels in the New Rockstars network. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.